Well, I guess a good place to start this story is to say I prefer Pete Townshend's solo records to The Who. You know,
Blasphemous.
I know that's so blasphemous, and that's not to say I don't enjoy The Who. You know, especially the classic records like Who's Next and Quadrophenia. I love, but there's something about Pete Townshend's voice that touches me more than Roger Daltrey. Roger Daltrey always seems a little macho, like I can't quite warm up to it, where Pete Townshend has more of a vulnerable quality to his voice. I've never gotten to interview anybody in The Who, much to my disappointment with all the years of magazine work I've done. However, one day I was at O'Hare Airport waiting for a flight, and I was walking through the terminal, and I saw Pete Townshend sitting there reading a book, and I thought, this is my chance. I've got to say hi to him and tell him that I think his record, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, is one of the greatest rock records ever made. So I did. He didn't seem particularly happy to be interrupted from his book, you know. I sort of apologized, as you do, for interrupting him, but told him that, and that seemed to be something that he didn't hear very often. So he, acknowledged it and said, thank you very much. He said, that's my favorite record too, that I've done. And I got an autograph, and his autograph is on my wall in my office. So that was my moment with Pete Townshend. But this record that I mentioned, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, came out in 1983. It was the follow-up to a record called Empty Glass, which was a really popular record. It had Let My Love Open the Door, his best-known solo single. I think that All the Best Cowboys, for a moment, it pointed in a direction that rock could have gone. Rock could have grown up and been more mature and written about adult themes and have more sophisticated song structures. Everything about that record is kind of an anomaly in rock music. There's nothing that sounds like it. The language is so unique, even to Pete Townshend. It's very complex and poetic. Some would say pretentious. I can see if you'd made an argument like that record is terrible because it's pretentious. But to me, those songs really spoke to me, and they still speak to me, which is unusual because a lot of them are about aging. And even though Pete was only in his 30s at that time, they still resonate. And I think I just read an interview with him recently where he was talking about that record, and he said those songs hold up for him better than any other songs that he's written because he was so honest in a way that he was never honest in The Who, where he was talking about his his issues with being an adult and leaving behind certain parts of his youth. It's no secret that the record was made under the influence of a lot of drugs, Cocaine. Pete was not in great shape, but amazingly, I guess he was one of those artists who is strong enough and can function, a high-functioning addict, When I listen to it, whenever I pull that record out, I have it on CD and vinyl, I end up listening to it for about 3 weeks and nothing else. It's one of those records that I just dive into and I just want to stay there. And then a year might go by before I listen to it again, So I'm always stumping for that record, trying to get people interested in it. And I don't know anybody else that loves it. Although when I posted about it, a few friends said oh yeah, that's a great one.
What are some of the memorable songs from it?
The Sea Refuses No River is, I think, one of the best songs that Pete Townshend has ever written. Another one called Slit Skirts.
That's what I was wondering, Slit Skirts.
Yeah, Slit Skirts, Uniforms, Face Dances, Part 2.
Yeah.
That was the single. Stardom and Acton is a great song about being an aspiring young musician, dreaming of being a rock star. It's so much of it is about both youth and how you reconcile getting older with your dreams of youth. Do you let them go? Do you let them evolve? It's a really deep mature record. I mean, I just can't say enough about it. Musically, it's really adventurous too. Almost none of the songs are verse, chorus. They're all kind of like A, B, D, C, B. It's like, what? Almost Brian Wilson in the complexity and scope of it, you know? Beautiful arrangements. Pete's playing incredible guitar, string arrangements. You know, it's just, I just still feel like it's one of the great overlooked albums. It was recently reissued in 180 gram vinyl, which I have not bought yet, but I probably will.
I bought that. I remember hearing it on Q95. It was our album rock station in central Indiana.
Yeah.
And they were playing Slit Skirts a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought it rocked. I thought it was kick-ass, and I bought the album. And I remember listening to it a bit, but I don't know when you stop listening to a record and you kind of forget it existed.
Yeah.
I remember my friends and I thought it was like one of the greatest album titles of all time, just because we were thinking of Italian westerns.
Yeah.
You know, and
right.
That's probably what it meant, but now I want to go back and listen to it.
And I will also say, kind of late in my love of this record, I discovered that there's a 30-minute documentary about the making of it that's on YouTube that's fascinating and very much of the time, 1983, but funny too. Like, you get a real sense of, even though it's a serious record, Pete has a great sense of humor, and that comes through in the documentary. And I guess they made it, you know, as or right around the time MTV was taking off, as a kind of promotional film. You know, I don't know where people would have watched it in 1983. But
go watch that, folks, and leave comments saying that Otis Gibbs and Bill DeMain sent y'all, and maybe it'll send a few more people to watch this.
Yeah, I would like to know if anybody who watches your channel and hears this, if anybody else loves this record as much as I do. Because sometimes I kind of feel like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I'm the only one. You know, I know that can't be true, but it's certainly one of the least loved records in the whole Who, Pete Townshend canon. You know, I think a lot of people would probably even put things like Who Are You above it, you know, which is not a great Who record, but...
Okay, my favorite Who period is like Kids Are All Right, Pictures of Lily.
That's amazing.
Can't Explain. That stuff right there really hits it for me, and there's other stuff that's great.
Oh yeah.
But when I think,
Disguises.
Man, I want some Boris the Spider.
So Sad About Us.
Happy
yeah.
Jack. I want some of that when I listen to the Who.
Yeah. That's it. You know, it's funny, that period of the Who, I think Roger Daltrey was more in touch with his sensitive feminine side. He wasn't trying to be like all macho and screaming like he did later. That's why a lot of those songs, they just kind of have this real delicate pop thing about them. They're perfect 2.5-minute songs, all Substitute, all those things.
They're very creative.
Very creative. And I don't know if you're hip to, you know, there have been, I think, 3 volumes of what they call Scoop, Pete Townshend demos. And a lot of the demos for those early Who songs are on those Pete Townshend records. And once again, once I hear Pete sing it, like when I heard Pete sing Substitute, I was like, that's better than the Who version, you know.
I usually like imperfect voices better than...
Yeah.
You know, he's got that, and I usually like the demos better than the albums when I hear them.
Me too.
So I should probably stay away from those records.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that the Who is still, they're still doing it in a way. You know, I mean, I don't think they've officially broken up. I know Daltrey's out there touring solo right now, but doing Who songs as he would. And Pete's doing his things, you know, different theatrical. I think there's a Tommy and a Quadrophenia musical right now being restaged. So here's something funny about the Who. I credit the Who in a way with saving my hearing, because on the Who Are You tour, I went to see them. It was the first time I ever saw them at Madison Square Garden. And I had been to a lot of concerts prior to that, in the 4 or 5 years leading up to that, I'd never worn earplugs. Didn't really think that I needed them. And I remember being at that Who concert, and I, as a teenager, it takes a lot to admit this because you want to be cool and tough. I was like, there's something not right about this. Like, my ears really hurt. It feels like somebody's punching my eardrum. And it was almost like I could feel like my internal organs like moving around. And I went out into the bathroom and just stuffed a bunch of tissue in my ear. And ever since that concert, I've worn earplugs in one form or another. So I think if I hadn't done that, because I saw so many loud rock concerts in the 80s, I probably would have lost a lot of my hearing.